Well, good morning. Good to see everyone here. We welcome you all to this last session of our July series on justice, and I'm so very grateful for the good content and conversation that we have enjoyed over this last month around issues of justice in our community and in the world, and am especially grateful to the ACT Council Education Work Group, which came up with this idea, and doubly especially grateful for the really substantive conversation that we had last week with Darrell Moore. We were so grateful for his sharing, vulnerability, and the sacredness of his story. And today we turn our attention to an issue that is very disconcerting and concerning for many of us, and that is, of course, gun violence in our community. We come today with the shadow that looms over us all in the wake of many deaths over these past years. Perhaps most tragically, the killing of children in schools, and also the recognition of lives lost in churches and other places of gathering. And so this morning we come really with heavy hearts, with deep sense of conscience, and also in a spirit of prayer as we think on what can we do beyond thoughts and prayers to engage and to change the facts of the situation as they currently are here in this nation now. And so today we will have the opportunity to have three segments, and the last of which will be representatives from March for Our Lives, the local chapter of young people who are advocating for an end to gun violence. Middle segment will be members of our own group called the Grandmothers Against Violence, which was founded here at Broadway. I shouldn't say it's our own group because we have representatives from other congregations as well. But we're so very pleased that these persons wearing orange to my left are engaged in this important issue, recognizing the power of generations. And so we will have some of our youngest and some of our most senior, generation unto generation, recognizing that this is an issue which we all care about and churches care about. And then finally, at the beginning of our program today, we will have an interview that I did earlier this week with Dr. Jamie Cowlisar, who is the executive director of Faith in Texas, an organization founded by our very own Dr. Lydia Bean and Shane Claiborne, a very well-known community activist, Christian activist, and someone who has been working on this issue for some time now. We enjoy about a 17-minute conversation, and one thing you will hear about is, at the outset of the interview, is the work that we did following the mass killing in Uvalde, when about 40 members and friends of Broadway joined with other persons of faith all throughout the Metroplex in going and in demonstrating before the office of Senator John Cornyn. As a part of that, there was an act of advocacy as we were asking the senator to take action. And we're pleased to report, and you will hear about this in the video, that some action was taken, and we need to celebrate those kinds of victories. In addition to that, of course, there's still more work to be done, and Shane Claiborne especially helps us think through what it is that we can be doing next to reduce harm caused by gun violence in our communities and also in our nation. So we're so glad that you are here with us today. We welcome you all, and I hope that you will now enjoy the interview. Okay, a wonderful opportunity today to have with us Dr. Jamie Kalasar, who is the Executive Director of Faith in Texas, an organization founded by our very own Lydia Bean, who is a member here at Broadway and is the former Executive Director of that organization. We will have the opportunity to hear a little bit about the organization and specifically its work around issues of reducing gun violence here. And so Dr. Kalasar, a very warm welcome to you. And then another person that we're very excited to have with us today is Shane Claiborne. Shane is, many people know Shane across the nation, around the world. He is with an organization called Red Letter Christians. Shane is, I would say, one of the leading thought leaders and activists, Christian activists in the world, and we're so very honored to have you with us. So welcome to both of you. So glad to have you.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Great. Dr. Kalasar, I want to start with you. Just tell us briefly, for those who are unfamiliar with Faith in Texas, tell us what it does and kind of its organizing goals.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Reverend Price. As you stated, I stand on the shoulders of Dr. Lydia Bean, who started this organization in 2013. So the main goal of Faith in Texas is to organize faith-based congregations. We are a multi-faith organization to continue to promote justice and equality, to use our faithful voice, our prophetic power in the streets, if I can use that word, to let politicians and to let them know that, look, we claim to be a Christian nation, but yet still we are doing the exact opposite when it comes to the least of these, and how do we protect them? So we organize around mass incarceration, we organize around housing, we organize even in issues in regard to gun control, as you were able to participate in. So we continue to work with all faiths. We're nonpartisan, that we don't discriminate against any religion, and that we come together just to make sure to show how our collective power can push the margins of society to make all people feel like they are welcomed and they belong.
Wonderful. Dr. Kalasar, just following the mass shooting at Uvalde, Faith in Texas hosted what was called a prophetic demonstration outside of Senator John Cornyn's office. And we had about 40 or so members and friends from Broadway to make the travel from Fort Worth over to Dallas to be a part of that action. But for those who are unfamiliar with that term, would you tell us a little bit about what a prophetic demonstration is, and also specifically what took place there at Senator Cornyn's office on that day?
Yeah, a prophetic demonstration is, if you're a Christian, it's within the same spirit of when Joshua marched around the walls of Jericho, and to show the power of God to bring down strongholds. And so what we wanted to do was to let our senator, who says he is a Christian, who says he believes in life, who says he took the oath to protect, to show that we as believers don't feel that he's been doing the job adequately or enough. And he was one of the senators, and thanks to Shane and Reverend McBride, who pointed out to us that these were one of the senators that were blocking swifter gun control. So what we wanted to do on that day was to bring out as many clergy, as many individuals of various faith voices, to show that even though we have different buildings, we worship in different buildings, we all have the same voice, and that we all are together as one. And so that was a powerful display of example of power in real form. And unfortunately, I could not be there because I caught COVID at the same time. But I just want to say, Reverend Price, you showed up, as well as your church. as well as the other congregations, and it was powerful. And I believe it did push Cornyn to do something, but we know it's not enough. So we have to continue to keep pressing the buttons.
Sure. And one thing that may be said, Dr. Calasar, in addition to what you noted there, was that not only did an event take place outside of his office, but a delegation from Faith in Texas also went in to meet with representatives from the senator's office as well. Mm-hmm. And so there was a kind of a conversation around policy, which took place also.
Yeah, that's right. So we had the folks outside, and we had the folks that met with. He sent one of his staffers, and usually when you talk to a staffer, they're gonna just listen and take the message back to him. But yet still, it was good for the staffer to see that we were well organized and that we are very serious about this and that we want to see change immediately.
Okay, that's probably a really good segue to Shane. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the national work that Red Letter Christians is doing around the issue of gun violence, and then specifically talk about this one piece of federal legislation which was passed, which was less than what Faith in Texas has been asking, is really what's being pushed for. It was a step of progress, but really big picture, what else needs to be done now?
Yeah, well, first, it's great to be with all of you, I grew up in the South. I grew up in East Tennessee, even though I've been in Philly for 25 years, and grew up with guns, grew up hunting. Very comfortable with firearms, and the longer I lived in Philly, on the north side of Philadelphia, we've seen one life after another lost to guns. We've got memorials on almost every corner of our neighborhood, and the collective memory of the events that happened there. This year, we surpassed 500 gun deaths in Philadelphia alone, over 40,000 around the country. So during the pandemic, our gun deaths are the highest that they've been in decades. In fact, in Philly, it's the highest it's ever been in this city. And I grew up saying I'm pro-life, and I still really believe and aspire to be a champion for life without exceptions, not on one issue, but on every issue. And that's why I'm so deeply concerned, is I believe every person is made in the image of God, and their life matters. And the fact is that gun violence is the largest cause of death of our children, above cancer, above car accidents. It's been that way for African-American kids, who are 10 times more likely to die than white kids. But over the past year, it's become the number one cause of death of all of our children. And of course, Uvalde is one manifestation of that, right? That we may not all agree on abortion, although I passionately care about abortion and reducing abortion. But what we hopefully can all agree on is that third graders, fourth graders are their lives are so precious that it should do something to us when we see these lives taken. And the mass shootings are less than 2% of the gun deaths in our country. So they grab our hearts, as they should, but so should the lives of those that we don't know their names, that are dying every day in the streets of our city. So, we do celebrate this bipartisan act. I got to be at the White House along with my brother, Michael McBride, and so many other great folks that have been working for years and years to save lives. So we do celebrate this bill because there's some things in it that I think will save lives. It addresses what's often called the boyfriend loophole, domestic abusers, which we know that domestic violence is one indication that can determine that someone's likely to be violent outside of their household and to take someone's life. It's also a gun in the home makes a woman or an intimate partner that's a victim of domestic violence 5 times more likely to become a victim of domestic homicide, to die. So these are really important things that Republicans and Democrats agreed on. Red flag laws, we know that there are indicators that we can see ahead of time. In fact, many of these mass shootings, there were multiple lights on the radar, red flags that were out there. So it allows teachers, family members that are concerned that someone is in imminent danger to themselves or to others to put a red flag out there so that they might investigate the presence of guns in that person's life and possibly preempt a tragedy from happening. More background checks, extensive background checks. This is one of those things that like 80%, 90% of gun owners want to see stricter background checks, especially on minors. You know, in many of our states, 18-year-olds cannot buy a beer or rent a car, but they can acquire an assault rifle or multiple guns that and they disproportionately account for a number of the murders and violent crimes, 18 to 20-year-olds. So just making it a little harder to access guns when folks are that young. Those are a few of the things. The other thing that's huge is that this Safer Communities bill that was just passed allocates resources to communities and to organizations, to grassroots folks that are trying to de-escalate violence and work to stop gun violence and suicide. Suicide's over half of our gun deaths. So there's a part of it that's, really comprehensively working to save lives. So that's why I can say we can celebrate this, that Sure. This will save lives, but we can also still have a heavy heart because there's so many other things that I think we could do that would save more lives. And, Martin Luther King, he's one of my heroes. And he said, a law can't make you love me, but it can make it harder for you to kill me. And that's what we want to do, right? We want to make it harder for people to kill. No law is going to change a violent heart or a racist heart. Only God can do that. But we can make it harder for people to kill. And right now we're making it really, really easy.
Sure. I appreciate that so much, Shane. And I think you alluded to this, but I actually think I saw a picture of you at the White House for the signing of that particular piece of legislation. So congratulations on at least one positive step forward and really a bipartisan step. So probably the big question, we only have 3 or so minutes here left together, but kind of what local churches can be doing, and perhaps we should say even specifically local churches here in Texas, which has such a strong, not only a strong gun culture, but is also seen as a bellwether on a lot of things related to that. So what can a church like Broadway be doing now?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Dr. Price. I would say we need to continue to press Senator Cornyn and to press our leaders. One of the things that stood out, as Shane pointed out, the red flag laws. Texas is balking at that. So even though the bill may be passed, Texas still wants to kind of hold on to certain things. So we need to continue to press Cornyn to ensure that the bill is, the bill does what it's supposed to, and that it's enacted properly, because even the bill can be there, but it still doesn't stop people from getting their hands on semi-automatic rifles, right? The 18-year-olds can still purchase them. So there were certain things that were left out of that bill that Texas is balking at. So we do need to continue to write Senator Cornyn. We do need to continue to have meetings with him to agitate him, like the persistent woman and the judge, right? We know that story, that we have to keep on pressing, keep on bothering until we get what we want. So, there's so many other things that we can do, but definitely those two things are key in getting to move the pendulum so that we can see some change, some real change.
That's wonderful, Dr. Calasar. We had a conversation on another issue last week in the same forum where the persistent widow was mentioned as well. So I think maybe the Lord's telling us something about that. So thank you.
Yes.
Shane.
Just briefly, a lot of times folks say to me, well, this is not a gun problem, it's a heart problem. And I think in churches, we can say this can be both, right? Mm-hmm. That God heals hearts and people change and shape policies. And, think about cars, all the things that cars are not designed to kill, but they can be deadly. So we've done so many things to try to protect people from dying in a car accident. We have, you have to pass a test to get a license. If you abuse your license, you can lose your license. We have speed limits, and we also have technology, airbags and seat belts. All those things are meant to protect life. And yet, when it comes to guns, there's this kind of resistance that I think we've got to push through. And technology is a piece of it. I think we can incentivize smart fingerprint technology that would save some lives. It's not going to solve everything, but it would, a kid finds a gun in a home or a gun stolen. It would make it harder. So let's think with all of our minds. Let's do research, and in the same way that tobacco companies blocked cancer research because it would, incriminate them. Like we need to know, how can we do a better job at saving lives? What's effective, both with technology and with policies? So all of us who care about life, let's give it all we've got, all of our thoughts and prayers, but also all of our genius minds and our sweat. Let's get in the streets, let's get in those offices and demand that our politicians do a better job at protecting life on guns.
Yeah, and just one more thing I want to say, and Shane reminded me of this, that if we claim to be pro-life, then we have to make sure that we're doing that from the fetus all the way until adult life. Right now, we are pro-fetus, but we're not pro-life. And pro-life is making sure that we enact the bills or enact the laws that protect all people from senseless deaths like gun violence.
One of the things that's so important about the statewide and the national purview of this is that the same week the Supreme Court ruled in favor of states being able to make regulations on abortion, they ruled against states being able to make some regulations on guns. And that's what's a problem, because in Philadelphia, we passed a law that we don't want assault rifles on our streets. But then the gun lobby will take that all the way to the federal court, and they can win on the Second Amendment if we don't have some comprehensive work. So the work you all are doing locally is so important. And we've also got to connect that work around the country for comprehensive gun reforms.
Shane, such an honor to be with you. Dr. Calasar, thank you so much for what you are doing in Dallas. We're looking to move Faith in Texas westward here into Tarrant County. So we're hoping to be able to work collaboratively on a lot more things over the coming years. Thank you both for your persistent witness. The importune widow would be so proud of both of you. And we truly appreciate you so very much. So thank you for your time today. God bless your work.
All right. Thank you.
Guys. Okay, we're very grateful for that conversation with these two, and a lot of, I think, inspiring thoughts, and also some really practical kinds of steps that we can be engaged in from a faith-based perspective, recognizing that it's important that communities of faith lend our own voices. Today, next, it is my honor to welcome the Grandmothers Against Violence coming to speak to us. They will share a little bit about their work, I am sure, but we will hear today specifically from Jean Andrus, Becky DeLon, and Claudine Marion, three wonderful, wonderful human beings who have been at this for a good many years and have been much like that importune widow. And these are the persistent grandmothers who come to speak to us today. So welcome. You got it. Okay.
Thank you. The story of Grandmothers Against Violence is so simple. The day after the Parkland shooting, Joreen, Claudine, and I met. We knew we had to speak out. We could not understand why our lawmakers did not enact new laws to protect our children and our citizens from gun violence. So we decided to form a group, a non-political group. We then created a mission statement asking for a ban on all military assault rapid-fire weapons. And we focused our efforts on supporting our students who were speaking out. At Joreen's suggestion, we called ourselves grandmothers. As Joreen said, because grandmothers love children fiercely. To introduce our efforts, we invited friends and neighbors into our home and had cookie and card gatherings. We provided cards, stationery, pens, and the addresses of all elected officials for friends to use so they could write letters and voice their feelings. These meetings were well attended. Later, during lunch with Ryan and Irie, we told about our idea, and Irie asked if we had talked to the Pascal High School March for Our Lives student organizers, Lucy Areola and Lillian Scott. We contacted these students and they told us about their poster party, and we attended their party, and we took cookies. As Claudine said, isn't that what grandmothers do? We made posters with them and got to know them, and they told about us on their social media. They said, our grandmothers have our backs. Later, we joined them for their March for Our Lives in downtown Fort Worth, and many of you were there with us, along with several thousand other people. This is one of the posters that we used. And I must tell you, this is a fly swatter. Our art department is very creative. Afterwards, Lucy and Lillian asked us if we could help them schedule an appointment with House of Representative member Kay Granger. They had been trying for a long time but had been unsuccessful. So we began to work on that appointment, and we were able to get it for them, and we sat in while they visited with Kay Granger. They were so impressive. They spoke clearly, decisively, and asked for her help. COVID has slowed us, but we continue to send emails to elected officials. We support other like-minded groups, and we use Zoom meetings to become better informed. The grandmothers began 4.5 years ago with the determination to speak out. Today, we enjoy hearing voices all across our country speaking out. Now, you can hear from the head of our art department, Claudine.
June the 25th, June Parrish, Elizabeth Roper, Ken Krause, Ryan Price, and I went to the Fort Worth Gun Show. This gun show comes every month. It is the largest gun show in the country. We are known as the gun show town. They advertise that there are over 1,000 tables of guns and other related items. We walked in the door. The first thing we saw was a big sign over the very first booth, German World War II memorabilia. I get upset every time I say that. Just as advertised, tables and tables of guns, all kinds of guns. AK-47s, you name it, they have it. Of course, anyone can buy a gun, one or more. There's no background needed, no background checks needed. That's the law. Even when there are laws, the gun shows do not have to adhere to the law, as of now. It's a family affair. You can buy a perfect replica of an AK-47 for your child. There is a booth recruiting the Texas militia. Another disturbing fact about the gun show is that the Sheriff's Department is recruiting there. We have been concerned about the gun shows for some time. Thousands of people attend every month. It's all very legal. Elizabeth Roper made a presentation to the City Council in 2019. We called on the former Mayor Price's office and several individual council members. We've tried to get an op-ed article printed in the Star-Telegram. The editor returned it saying, "We're going to pass on this." We want our Fort Worth residents to know what is going on in our city. We keep trying to find an angle, just might put some restriction on this very poisonous event in our beloved city. The United States Senate passed a bill to address gun violence that amounts to the first major federal gun safety law in decades. The assault weapon ban of 1994 expired 10 years ago. It expired in 10 years, and that was 2004. The gun deal includes millions of dollars of mental health, school crisis intervention programs, and incentives to states to include juvenile records in the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. This is not enough. Our state has done nothing. I just read in the Star-Telegram on Thursday that the AR-15 has brought in more than $1 billion in 10 years, and that the sales of just 2 companies have tripled in the past 3 years. AR-15s are marketed to young men as their way to prove their masculinity. There are 15 youth in the Fort Worth Juvenile Detention Center right now. They are there for capital murder. No civilian needs an assault rifle. Let's get people in office who are committed to saving our youth, our children, our promise for the future.
As I've been thinking about our beloved Broadway's response to gun violence, what can we bring to the table? I remember the thrill of seeing our young people who not only participated in, but led March for Our Lives this year. Change comes from generation after generation, building upon what has been, making changes for the better, reacting to, rebelling to make a better world. So then I began to wonder about our youth department. Being out of touch and not knowing you as well as I wish I did, and I plan to do something about it, I followed your lead and looked up on the internet to find out who you are and what you care about and where you're leading us. And the following is what I learned about Generation Z. You're going to love this. They are racially and ethnically diverse, and they view diversity as a very good thing. They are on track to be the most well-educated generation, less likely to drop out and more likely to attend college. They are more concerned with global challenges and are more apt to consider themselves global citizens. They are more willing to change for the greater good and therefore see change as a very good thing. In our consumer society, these young people are very shrewd consumers. They're attracted to purchases and branding that supports their values. Their politics are progressive, and they are more optimistic about the future than we are. Yeah. Thank the Lord. And Generation Z gives the greatest voice to social causes on the internet. And I ask you, isn't that what we, the older generations, have been praying for? Isn't this kind of leadership what we've been waiting for? And isn't that why we're here today, to join hands with those who are our future? We must remember those life-changing words that we get to hear every week in this beloved place. The world is now too dangerous for anything but truth and too small for anything but love. We must believe our youth will allow God to take their minds and think through them. And we must pray together that we will all let God take our hearts and set them on fire.
Thank you all so very much. I think that makes for a great introduction to our next speakers, and a very inspiring way to introduce them. So thank you very much, Claudine and Jean, and especially Becky, for your words about this next generation. We too today have two representatives from the local chapter of March for Our Lives. As was mentioned a few moments ago, it was Paschal students who organized the march downtown following the shooting at Parkland 3 years ago. And then it was, again, students here from our own community who organized the march at the Tarrant County, the demonstration at the Tarrant County Courthouse and march following the events in Uvalde. Two of those are here with us today. The first of which is Lily Doze, who is a sophomore at the Young Women's Leadership Academy and also a member of our sister church, First Presbyterian, downtown. And then in addition to Lily, we also have Gabby Price, who is an incoming sophomore at Paschal High School and is, of course, a member here at Broadway. Let us join together in welcoming them to come and speak to us.
Okay, so today we're going to tell you about March for Our Lives. So what is March for Our Lives? March for Our Lives is a youth-led organization committed to ending the gun violence epidemic. So I'm going to read to you their mission statement, which you can also read along. Born out of a tragic school shooting, March for Our Lives is a courageous, youth-led movement dedicated to promoting civic engagement, education, and direct action by youth to eliminate the epidemic of gun violence. They aim to create safe and healthy communities and livelihoods where gun violence is obsolete. So the story behind March for Our Lives is after the school shooting at Marjorie Stoneham Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Students were heartbroken over over the tragedy that took place and over the peers that they had lost, and they decided that action needed to be taken so that gun violence could end and no one else would have to experience what they experienced. So they created March for Our Lives, and it spread throughout the country. There was a nationwide march in 2018, and since then they've still been fighting for gun violence to end in various different ways, and we'll tell you about that.
Whoa, sorry. Okay. Why do we need gun safety? Like, why is it important here right now in Fort Worth, Texas? Like, you hear about it, you read the news, but like, what are you gonna do about it, you know? Okay, so these are the stats from 2021 in July, so a year ago. So mass shootings were up 21% nationwide, but up 65% in Texas. Oh, sorry, that source is from Gun Violence Archive. So if you wanted to know. Okay, so at the top you can see gun violence trends throughout previous years, but then at the bottom you can see as of April 17th, 2022, obviously those numbers have increased. We have 5,451 gun-related deaths, and we have 139 mass shootings. 1 in 5 people or someone that they care about is affected by gun violence. These are the gun-related deaths in the United States. As you can see, suicide has increased by a lot. And also homicide has increased very much. Okay, here are some pictures from the march this year in June. So March for Our Lives was founded in response to the Parkland shooting, and Lillian Scott and Lucy Areola started the movement they started the Fort Worth chapter of it. They go to Pass School, and then they kind of they went off to college, so they're very close family friends of mine, so they, kind of passed the baton, I guess. Okay.
So when Lily organized the event in June here in Fort Worth, she asked me to give a speech. So I'm going to read the same speech I gave then, but with updated numbers, because unfortunately the number of mass shootings since June has increased a lot. So 314. That's how many mass shootings have taken place in the United States this year alone. When we look at this number compared to any other developed country, the United States ranks far higher in the number of mass shootings than any of its peer countries. Because of this, the sad and scary truth is that children all over the United States have had to grow up with gun violence. Growing up with gun violence means having to practice and prepare for a school shooting with regularly scheduled lockdown drills. Growing up with gun violence means coming home from the park and turning on the news only to find out about a mass shooting that took place in a Walmart in El Paso, Texas. Growing up with gun violence means having a teacher tell you that if, God forbid, one day you have to run from a shooter, you should run in a zigzag line so that it is harder for you to be shot at. Growing up with gun violence means driving home after getting ice cream and turning on the radio in the car only to hear about a mass shooting that occurred inside a Century 16 movie theater in Aurora, Colorado. Growing up with gun violence means asking your parents to promise you that they won't hide you from the truth, but instead tell you every time they hear about a mass shooting so you can hear it from them instead of some kid from school. Growing up with gun violence means hearing about a mass shooting that took place in a nightclub in Orlando, Florida, or one in a supermarket in Boulder, Colorado, or at a church in Charleston, South Carolina, or a high school in Parkland, Florida, or thousands of other places, and getting scared that it will happen to you next. Growing up with gun violence also means being told that the gun violence epidemic is one too big to end, so we should resort to thoughts and prayers instead. But the truth is that thoughts and prayers aren't enough, and they haven't been enough for a long time. Thoughts and prayers didn't stop the 314 mass shootings that have already taken place in the United States this year. So instead of thoughts and prayers, we march so that the number won't become 315 or 316 or 317 or 400 or 1,000. We are here today to demand policy and change and to do something, to be a part of the change so that the next generation doesn't have to grow up with gun violence, so that the next generation doesn't have to march for their lives.
That's very good. Okay, I'm gonna read the speech that I gave now. It's sort of like a poetry type thing, so bear with me. Okay. Emotion becomes action. Action becomes reality. Reality. Reality is that there have been more mass shootings than days of the year in 2022. This is why we cannot become numb. Numb in response to fear. Let fear make us vulnerable. Vulnerable enough to inspire and stand up for what we really desire. Because the fear paralyzes you, but the silence paralyzed us all. Land of the free. Land of the free. Who are we to say that if the Second Amendment, wasn't it meant to protect lives? Lives. Wasn't it meant to protect lives, not egos? Do not leave your feelings to the side. Because when we abide by love, we put our egos to the side and vulnerability on the line. Don't we owe it to the families and victims of gun violence? When do we draw the line? When do we draw the line before he draws the trigger? When do we learn to empathize instead of blind our eyes by the numbness of fear? Ask yourself, why are you here? And what do you hide behind? Fear is so paralyzing. Who are we to disguise ourselves as good guys when we are numb? Numb to the point of silence. Point, gunpoint. Children held at gunpoint, while we point out the shooter. Don't we owe it to our future? Flags at half-mast. I have to ask, once more, what do you hide behind? Who do you hide behind? Whose blood is on your hands? Land of the free? Not what I see.
Okay, so lastly, obviously, gun violence is a very prevalent problem, but you can help take action. So for one, you can scan the QR code on the screen, and it will take you to the March for Our Lives' Take Action page, and there you can do different things. You can pledge to vote, sign petitions, donate, email representatives and senators, and various other things. And it'll take you directly to where to go, explain everything to you, and the importance of those different things. And then from there, you can also go to March for Our Lives' main page, where you can learn more about the movement, the organization, what they're doing, and you can just stay up to date with how to take action and what to do. So, and then along with that, we have different posters here with different QR codes that you can scan that will take you to different things. They all have a title, so those are also great ways to take action. And then we have stickers at the front and on every table that you can wear. So by scanning these QR codes, you can learn more about how to help and help take action to end the gun violence epidemic. Thank you.
Lily and Gabby, thank you all so very much for the action you have taken and the commitment and investment you have made, not only in your own lives and the life of your churches and the community, but also your generation and all of the generations that are to follow. You are a real inspiration, and we're here because we care about you, and we love you very much, and we love all of these young people, and their lives are so sacred, and that is why we have to speak up. Thank you all for being here today. We have about 7 or 8 minutes. I recognize that the choir members will peel off, but I think it would be appropriate for us to take the remainder of this time and just share at tables a couple of questions we would like for you to engage. The first is, how have you been inspired today by what you've heard? And the second is, where can you find your own personal point of entry into the work of ending gun violence in our country? So if you'll take the time to engage your neighbors, this is an important part of what we do. How have you been inspired, and what is your part in this work that is ahead? Thank you. I hope you will take the opportunity to have the good conversation.